A celebration of his life will happen Wednesday at Shoreline Church. The service will include full law enforcement honors.
City Code says an adult-oriented business cannot be built within 1,000 feet of a children's playground or a licensed daycare center, but just a couple of steps down the street, the plan is to build the site right here.
In this lawsuit, Roach says that he's looking for money to cover medical expenses and any losses that he had from losing his job due to this accident. But really what he's looking for even more is accountability. Though the organizers didn't know the victims personally, they lit their candles as a sign that this horrific series of events would not define them. While some students still decided to come to school today, others decided it would be best to just stay home. Students went from opening their cans to filling up their pots and then pouring it in their specially made cups. And Round Rock's historic Stagecoach Inn begins its journey to a new home today. It's moving from its current location on Round Rock Avenue to the bathing beach.
This is my home. These men and women are my family. I've grown up with them in the department.
Interim Chief Brian Manley led Austin through a terror crisis.
To have been able to do what I've done for this long, it's really, it's pretty special to get to do it here.
But even after his department took down suspect Mark Condit, who killed 2 people and injured several others in a serial bombing, Manley says it's his fellow officers who deserve the praise.
I always bring up the brave members of our SWAT team that when we stopped the bomber that night, they knew what they were getting into. They knew when they rushed that vehicle to try to take him into custody, there was a strong likelihood that he would have a bomb and that he would detonate it. And they did their job, and they did it bravely.
Just one day after Manley officially called Condit a domestic terrorist.
The faith community just wanted to say to him and all of his officers, well done.
The chief was honored at Austin's annual Good Friday service at the Frank Irwin Center.
March 30th, 2018, on behalf of the city and the mayor, as Chief Brian Manley Day.
It's humbling to be the person that gets to accept the recognition, but I only agree to do it if they give me the moment to recognize everyone who is a part of this.
Now some say Manley deserves the title of chief.
And the way he responded and led his team during the most horrific thing that ever happened to Austin, Texas, he is the chief. He doesn't need a title.
Chelsea Moreno, KXAN News.
Hundreds gathered on UT's main mall for an emotional flag-lowering ceremony to celebrate the life of Harrison Brown. The university also dedicated a tree and unveiled a memorial for him on the corner of 21st and Speedway. He was stabbed and killed, and 3 others were injured in an attack last May.
It's going to remind us to honor his memory in a thoughtful or a spiritual way.
Authorities say the suspect, Kendrix White, was suffering from mental health issues when he carried out the attack. That's why students are voicing their concerns about having access to counseling on campus.
UT is one of 2 universities in the state that charges for its mental health services. Students say that if they could just worry less about what's in their wallet when they walk through these stores, they could focus more on getting help.
I think that is sort of going against their efforts to show how accessible mental health care can be.
The Counseling and Mental Health Center at UT, however, does offer different options for those who can't pay.
For students who it creates a bit of a hardship, we have payment plans. And then for students who can't pay that at all, then we have a fund in Student Emergency Services that can help cover the cost of that.
Friends of Brown also suggest installing more security cameras and controlling the amount of people allowed on campus. UTPD Chief David Carter says they take student concerns seriously and that it's crucial for change to happen.
You have to have an engaged student government, you have to have an engaged student community, an engaged faculty community. All of those things play a role in the overall safety.
4 years ago, the force had just 67 officers, and Carter hopes to expand to 104 by January. Chelsea Moreno, Texas News Watch. Anti-fascism proponents nicknamed Antifas organized rallies in more than a dozen U.S. cities on Saturday, including right here at Austin City Hall. They were kicking off a plan to end what they're calling a nightmare.
A regime that is denying basic rights and humanity.
The group drew a heavy volume of counter-protesters that more than doubled their numbers.
and Austin police officers formed a human wall between the two opponents.
How does it feel to be protected by the same people you want to shoot and kill in the streets?
Antifa groups plan to continue the protests into late November. In a post on their website, they wrote, "If this happens, then the whole political landscape would be dramatically transformed. Every faction within the established power structure would be forced to respond, and all this could lead to a situation in which this fascist regime is driven from office." Recent demonstrations from the group have turned violent, but with more than 160 law enforcement officials there, officers hope to prevent that from happening.
We're just here to make sure that everybody can express their First Amendment right and do so in a safe manner.
Anti-fascist advocates started these protests with the goal of overthrowing the Trump administration, but critics say they have no premise.
They really just say things like Trump's a fascist, he's a racist, he's a bigot, but they don't really say anything to back it up.
The group will continue their protests across the country this Saturday. Chelsea Moreno, Texas News Watch.
It was so hard to the point where I knew I wasn't going back to prison, but I didn't want to be out here. And I put a towel over my head and I walked into traffic on 290.
Roosevelt Miller first went to prison for committing burglary to support his drug habit. He dreamed constantly of being free from a cell, but says his biggest nightmare came when he got out.
I have to be out here 7 years before I'm allowed to rent an apartment complex.
He struggled with finding food, a job, and adjusting to the world outside of the Cofield unit in Tennessee Colony, one of the prisons he spent so much of his life in.
If I have nowhere to go, what am I supposed to do? I have to eat. I have to have somewhere to sleep. I have to have clothes. But now is how I'm going to get it.
Now what Miller went through is not unusual, which is why an organizing project called Texas Advocates for Justice wants to provide resources for formerly incarcerated people.
There's so many people who are returning from being inside and who are looking for, ways to connect to the community, looking for jobs, and so we're here to try to support that community.
Those resources include clothing drives and research, but the project's coordinator says it's much more than collecting data.
This is about us connecting with people and having their stories shape the work that we do.
Miller says their work is essential to the success of ex-prisoners like him.
It'd be one thing if I had a job waiting on me, a place to stay, a package for my food. And if that's available for when you get out, it would be so much easier.
Since his release in May of 2016, he's been able to reconnect with his daughter, get plugged into his church, go back to school, and finish writing a book.
God is the one that's in control of everything. So, I just believe that God has me here for a reason.
Chelsea Moreno, Texas News Watch.